I woke up cold. Not the ordinary cold of a blanket slipping in the night, but something sharper, closer to my scalp. I reached up, still half asleep, expecting to feel my hair fall across my fingers the way it always did. Instead, I felt skin. For a moment my mind refused the information. Then I sat up fast and the room spun. The clock read 6:14. Mark's side of the bed was empty. The champagne bottle from the night before stood on the dresser. The ice melted into gray water. I ran to the bathroom and turned on every light. The woman in the mirror did not look like me. My hair, the same dark waves I had worn since college, was gone. Uneven patches of stubble crossed my scalp. 2 small cuts marked the skin near my ear. Strands of hair still clung to the collar of my sleep shirt. I gripped the counter until my knuckles ached. In the bathroom trash can, half hidden under paper towels, I found Mark's electric clippers, my hair still caught in the blades. Back in the bedroom, a folded note waited on my pillow. I hadn't noticed it before. I read it once, then twice, because my mind kept looking for a kinder explanation. Now you look just as ridiculous as the person you really are. I called him. It rang through to voicemail. I called again, and this time a text came back instead. Don't be dramatic. It was a joke. You'll understand tonight. Tonight. Our 10th anniversary. The night 300 people would watch us celebrate a decade of marriage. And the same night I was supposed to wire $15 million of my grandmother's inheritance into the investment company Mark said would secure our future. My hands were shaking too hard to hold the phone, so I called the one person who always answered before the second ring. Grace Morgan had been my closest friend since law school, and now she was the attorney who managed every detail of my trust. When she heard my voice, something in her changed instantly. Nora, what happened? He shaved my head. There was a pause, sharp and complete. Are you safe right now? That question cracked something open in me. I told her about the note, the clippers, the champagne that had put me under faster than 2 glasses should have. Don't shower, she said. Don't clean anything. Take pictures of everything. I'm calling the police, and then I'm coming to you. I can't call the police over a haircut. Nora. Her voice didn't rise, but it hardened. This isn't a haircut. If he drugged you and did this while you couldn't consent, that's assault. Full stop. By 7 that morning, 2 officers stood in my bedroom while I sat wrapped in a robe, answering questions I never imagined I'd need words for. Did I give my husband permission to shave my head? No. Did I remember it happening? No. Did I take any sleep medication? No. They bagged the clippers. They photographed the note. An ambulance took me to the hospital, where a nurse cleaned the small cuts near my ear and drew blood for a toxicology panel. Someone humiliating you while you're unconscious isn't a joke, she told me quietly. Don't let anyone talk you into calling it that. I held on to those words while I waited for Grace. She arrived within the hour, opened her laptop at my bedside, and logged into the trust portal to check on my grandmother's $15 million. It was still there. For a second I let myself feel relief. Then an alert flashed on the screen. An attempted login at 6:31 that morning. The verification code had gone to an old backup number, one that led straight to a phone Mark kept locked in his home office. Grace turned the screen toward me. He didn't do this because he thought you'd cancel the transfer, she said. He did it because he thought you'd be too broken to notice everything else. I looked at my reflection in the dark edge of her laptop, my scalp bare, my face swollen from crying. And for the first time in years I saw my husband clearly. My mother, Helen, arrived at the hospital in her old blue raincoat, took one look at me, and didn't ask a single question about what had happened. She just held my face in both hands. I should have listened to you months ago, I whispered. No, she said. We are not starting there. By late morning, with a police escort, we returned to the house. I wore a knitted cap pulled low and let myself into my own kitchen like a stranger. Coffee grounds sat in the sink. Half a bagel waited on a plate. The ordinary leftovers of a man who had shaved his wife's head while she was unconscious and still remembered to eat breakfast. The shared tablet sat charging by the pantry. I typed in the passcode we'd used for years, recipes, travel plans, bills, and Mark's email opened right along with it. Grace leaned over my shoulder as I searched for Bennett Legacy Partners, the company Mark had spent months describing as our future. Dozens of emails appeared. Investment summaries, legal drafts, numbers that all traced back to my inheritance. Grace opened the operating agreement and went still. "You're listed as the primary capital contributor," she said, scrolling, "but not as the managing member. I thought we had equal control." "You don't." She turned the screen toward me. "The voting rights belong to a holding company registered in Delaware, managed by an entity called VHC Development Group." I stared at the letters until they resolved into a name. Vanessa. Then I remembered Brenda Foster, Mark's director of business development, the woman he mentioned in every third story about work. The one who landed the account. The one who understood the pressure he was under. The company had been formed 7 months earlier, 2 weeks after my grandmother's estate entered probate. "They planned this," I said. Grace didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was quiet. "Yes. We found 2 versions of the same presentation. The one Mark had shown me in March described safe investments, municipal bonds, index funds, a modest real estate stake. The one he'd sent to Brenda described something else entirely. Paying off debts from his consulting firm, buying a vacation property outside Scottsdale, and funneling nearly $4 million into a boutique hotel project owned by Brenda's brother. My name appeared exactly once, under a single heading. Source of capital. I sat down hard at the kitchen table. "He told me the Arizona property was for us. It's titled to the holding company," Grace said. "So Brenda owns it. Brenda controls it." The distinction should have felt small. It didn't. My mother moved quietly around the kitchen, filling the kettle, rinsing cups, the way people do when the world becomes too heavy to hold still in. Then Grace went silent in a different way, the way that meant she'd found something worse. She turned the tablet toward me. An email from Mark to Brenda, sent 3 weeks earlier. Once she signs, she can't pull it back without exposing herself to the tax consequences. She'll panic before she fights. Brenda's reply had come 6 minutes later. "After the anniversary, we won't have to pretend anymore." For a moment I heard nothing at all. Not the kettle. Not the officer standing near the front door. Not my mother's careful breathing beside me. I read it again. After the anniversary. Not someday. Not eventually. A date. My husband had planned our 10th wedding celebration, booked the ballroom, ordered a cake shaped like the one from our wedding, all while counting down to the night he would finally stop pretending to love me. And somewhere in that same folder, waiting to be opened, was a flight confirmation. 2 business class tickets from Chicago to Lisbon, departing 3 days after our anniversary. Passenger 1, Mark Whitaker. Passenger 2, Brenda Foster. No return date. No second ticket in my name. Grace didn't let me cancel the party. "Not yet," she said, when I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. "You expect me to stand next to him tonight? I expect you to decide what helps you most, not what warns him." By noon she had frozen every pending transfer, alerted the trust administrator, and started an emergency divorce filing that wouldn't go through until late afternoon, close enough to the party that Mark would have no time to react. That left one thing. I still had to go home and face him. He was in the living room when I walked in, adjusting his cufflinks, calm in a way that made my stomach turn. He had drugged me, shaved my head, tried to break into my inheritance, and then dressed for our anniversary like cruelty was simply another item on his morning list. His eyes went straight to the cap covering my scalp. There you are. I've been calling. No, you haven't. I set my phone on the counter, screen up. I'm recording this. He almost laughed. That's dramatic. Then quieter, more careful. Fine. Record it. I asked him why. He called it a joke, then a mistake, then finally, you've been distant. Ever since the inheritance, it's like you didn't need me anymore. There it was, the same trick he'd used for 10 years, turning his choices into something we had done together. I didn't argue. I just watched him work. Brenda came by last night, I said. His face flickered. She dropped off materials for the presentation. At midnight. We've been working on the company. The company she controls? That landed somewhere real. For half a second, his composure slipped, and I saw exactly how much he needed me to sign that money over before the night was through. Upstairs, I found what he'd left for me, a long blonde wig in a box beside a pale pink gown with a high neckline. He'd planned the wound and the way I was supposed to hide it. I left both untouched. I put on a white tailored suit, my grandmother's sapphire earrings, and wrapped a silk scarf around my bare head. You look like you're going to a business meeting, he said when I came down. In a way I am. The country club ballroom glittered with candlelight and champagne by the time we arrived. In the restroom mirror, I found Brenda fixing her lipstick. Ethan told me you had a difficult morning, she said sweetly. I pulled off the scarf. Her smile cracked for exactly 1 second before she rebuilt it. Some women know when a marriage is over, she said. Others need to be embarrassed into understanding it. Did he tell you the money already arrived? I asked. Her smile answered for her. My phone buzzed. 6 words from Grace. Funds secure. Petition filed. He's locked out. From the ballroom, I heard Mark tap a spoon against his glass. Please join me in welcoming my beautiful wife. I folded the scarf into my purse and walked in with my head uncovered. The room went quiet in waves, conversation dying as people turned to look at me. My mother stood near the back with one hand over her mouth. Mark froze for half a second under the chandelier, then rebuilt his smile just as fast as Brenda had. There she is. Claire decided to surprise us all with a bold new look. Behind him, our wedding photo glowed on the projection screen, me at 28 in my mother's veil. Him looking at me like I was the only person in the room. 10 years narrowed down to the pictures that made it look easy. He held out the microphone like a peace offering. I took it, but I didn't hand him back the room. When Mark and I married 10 years ago, we promised to protect each other's dignity, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I believed that promise. I built my life around it. Claire, maybe we should save this. I stepped away from him. This morning I woke up without my hair. Nobody laughed this time. I read the note exactly as he'd written it. Now you look just as ridiculous as the person you really are. His father lowered his glass. His mother stared at him like she was seeing a stranger. I went to the hospital this morning, I continued. Blood was drawn because 2 glasses of champagne shouldn't have put me under the way it did. The police have the glasses, the clippers, and the note. Brenda took a step backward. Mark reached for the microphone. I didn't let him have it. He also planned to announce tonight that $15 million from my grandmother's estate had been transferred into Bennett Legacy Partners. The screen behind him changed. Grace had swapped our anniversary photos for the corporate filings. My name under primary capital contributor. Brenda's company sitting above it, holding every vote. He told me it was a family company, I said. He didn't tell me I'd provide the money while someone else controlled it. This is a misrepresentation, Brenda said from the side of the stage. The documents are public filings. Grace answered from the back of the room. And executed drafts. The next slide was the email exchange. Once she signs, she can't pull it back. She'll panic before she fights. Then Brenda's reply. After the anniversary, we won't have to pretend anymore. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Brenda moved for the exit. A man near the door, Grace had arranged for an investigator to be present, stepped into her path. "You're free to leave. Preserve your phone and records. You'll be hearing from counsel." Mark grabbed for the microphone. The club manager caught his arm. "Sir, step back. This is my party," he snapped. "No," I said. "It was my money." I turned back to the guests. "He told you tonight we were transferring $15 million into our future." He was almost right. The final slide showed the trust confirmation. The money is secured in a new trust. It will provide for my mother, protect my future, and fund a program for women leaving financially controlling relationships. My mother started crying quietly in the back row. Grace walked forward and handed Mark a cream envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Notices preserving marital assets. Orders barring him from destroying financial records. "You planned this," he said, staring at me. "No, Mark. You planned this. I just stopped cooperating." I handed the microphone to the club manager and stepped down while he was still talking. It was the first time in 10 years I had walked away mid-sentence. The weeks after unraveled slowly, then all at once. The toxicology report came back showing a sedative I'd never been prescribed. Not conclusive on its own, but enough to keep the investigation open. A forensic accountant found Mark had been paying personal expenses through his consulting firm for over a year, and had pledged my guaranteed inheritance to 2 private investors before I'd ever agreed to anything. Grace found the proof on a draft document with my signature on it, dated a day I'd been 300 miles away at a conference. Forged. Brenda hired her own lawyer within a month and began cooperating. It stung more than I expected, not because I wanted her loyalty, but because Mark had been willing to burn down 10 years of marriage for a woman who abandoned him the second the costs became real. One evening, folding laundry with my mother, she pulled an old envelope from her desk drawer. "I should have shown you this years ago." Inside was a letter from my grandmother, written in blue ink, describing a first marriage I'd never known about. A husband who controlled every account until she left with 2 suitcases and $43. It was why she'd built the trust the way she had. At the bottom she'd written, "No woman in this family should ever have to buy her freedom twice." I read that line until the ink blurred. 3 months later, Mark asked for mediation. He looked thinner, his suit hanging loose at the shoulders. His lawyer offered a deal. He'd waive any claim to my inheritance in the house, issue a written apology, and in exchange, I'd tell prosecutors I didn't want to pursue the criminal side. "I already know my answer," I told Grace before we'd even sat down. Across the table, Mark looked at me the way he used to when he was afraid, not angry. "I made mistakes. But prison, is that really what you want? I don't control whether you go to prison. You know your cooperation matters." I paused. "So did mine when you wanted $15 million. He had no answer for that. "I may forgive you someday," I said. "But forgiveness is mine to give. Accountability isn't mine to erase." When the divorce was finalized 2 months after that, he looked at the short growth covering my head and said, "You ruined my life." "No," I said, standing. "I stopped holding it together for you. I sold the Naperville house and bought a small brick townhouse near my mother, with a kitchen window that faced east so morning light reached the table before I did. I kept my hair short, not because it hadn't grown back, but because I didn't want to become the woman who'd mistaken endurance for love. I wanted to become someone who knew the difference. Using part of the trust, I helped launch a program called Second Start, helping women leaving controlling relationships open their own accounts, find housing and hire attorneys without asking permission from the person hurting them. At the opening, a young mother named Tasha stood at the microphone, hands shaking. "A year ago I had to explain every grocery receipt to my husband," she said. "Today I signed a lease with my name on it." Then she looked straight at me. "You didn't save me. You helped me believe I was allowed to save myself." Mark eventually pleaded guilty to the financial charges tied to the forged documents, probation, restitution, mandatory counseling. The assault investigation ended in a lesser plea, less dramatic than the justice I'd imagined during those sleepless first nights, but it put the truth on record. Brenda lost her position, surrendered her stake in the company, and left the state. I never looked for what happened to her after that. I didn't need to watch either of them suffer. Knowing they couldn't profit from what they'd done was enough. 6 months after the divorce, a letter came from Mark, forwarded from my old address. I left it unopened for 3 days. When I finally read it, there were no excuses in it, just an admission that my inheritance had made him feel small, and instead of facing that, he tried to make me smaller. At the bottom he'd written, "I am sorry I mistook your love for permission." I folded it back into the envelope and didn't respond. I used to think healing meant getting an apology. Then I thought it meant getting justice. What it actually required was quieter than either truth, boundaries, and a life that no longer revolved around the person who hurt me. On the first anniversary of the morning I woke up bald. My mother and I sat on a bench by the lake before sunrise, coffee warming our hands. "Still keeping it short?" she asked, glancing at my hair. "Yes." "Good. It suits you." The horizon turned gold in front of us. A year earlier, I'd looked into a bathroom mirror and believed my husband had stolen something I could never get back. I know now that dignity was never in my hair. It was in the moment I stopped accepting his version of events as the truth. My hair grew back. My confidence grew back. My life grew back too, just not in the same shape. Came back stronger because for the first time it belonged entirely to me. Mark thought shaving my head would take my dignity from me. All he really did was clear the last thing standing between me and who he truly was.